I was 16 when my mother told me to get out, not in a whisper, not in the heat of an argument. She said it like a final verdict, cold, sharp, without blinking. You think the world owes you something? Let's see how far you get without us. I looked at my father. He didn't speak. Just folded his arms like a spectator watching a storm he didn't care to stop. Behind him, my brother stood leaning against the wall, smirking. He muttered under his breath, "She'll be back," begging. They thought I'd cry. They thought I'd fall apart, but I didn't. I packed a backpack, just a few clothes, my school ID, the book my grandmother gave me before she passed. No money, no plan, not even a goodbye. When I stepped outside, the porch light flickered behind me, like even the house wanted me gone. No one followed. No one watched me walk into the night. I remember the silence more than anything. Not the slam of the door, not the sound of my footsteps on gravel. Just silence. At 16, I became a ghost with a pulse. I wasn't running away. I had nowhere to run to. But something inside me, something stubborn, kept whispering, "Don't you dare prove them right." I found my first place to sleep behind a diner. Not in it, behind it. There was a broken-down storage room with a sink that dripped and a cot that smelled like old cigarettes. But the manager, Donna, said I could stay, if I showed up early to mop floors and stayed late to clean tables. She paid me in cash and leftover hash browns. I didn't complain. It wasn't shelter. It was survival. The walls were thin. I could hear people laughing inside, eating pie, sipping coffee like they were in some other world. A world that didn't forget birthdays. A world that didn't send 16-year-olds out with nothing. I kept my things in a garbage bag tucked behind the mop bucket. School became optional. No one noticed when I stopped going. No texts, no messages. Nothing from the people who raised me. Then, one day, I wiped down a counter while the TV in the corner played the evening news. A name caught my ear. My uncle. Dead. Stroke. I froze. I waited. I thought maybe someone, anyone, would call. But the only thing that rang was the bell on the diner door. That night, I sat on the edge of the cot with a paper napkin and wrote my name in shaky letters, over and over, just to remind myself I was still real, because by then I understood something. Cruel. You don't have to die to be forgotten. You just have to be inconvenient. People looked right through me. At the diner, I was just that girl with the mop. At the corner store, I was the one who always counts change twice. To the world, I was background noise. One night, I scraped my hand on a broken glass behind the bar counter. Didn't flinch. Didn't bleed much. The next morning, I wrapped the wound in an old dish towel and kept scrubbing, until someone noticed. Her name was Ms. Baird. She taught literature at the local high school. Came in every Friday, ordered black coffee and blueberry pie. She watched me for a long time before she said it. "You don't belong here." I didn't answer. Next time she came in, she left a business card on the counter. Counseling services, a school contact, shelter referrals, but I never called, because I'd already learned the first rule of surviving abandonment. Don't expect rescue. Don't expect second chances. When I passed out behind the dumpster 2 weeks later, I thought maybe that was it. My body gave up before I did. I woke up under flickering lights in the back of an ambulance. A paramedic said I was severely dehydrated. She handed me a granola bar and a juice box like I was 5, and even then, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I asked if I could go back to work the next day, because I didn't want help. I wanted control, and somewhere deep inside, even with my ribs showing and shoes 2 sizes too small, I knew, if I break now, they win. The hospital didn't keep me long. No insurance, no guardian, no reason to stay. They discharged me with gauze, a paper wristband, and a plastic bag of crackers. I walked back to the diner with a limp and a fever. Donna said I looked like death. I told her, not yet. That night, someone left a card at the front register. A woman. Said her name was May. Nobody knew her. No one remembered what she looked like. But the card was thick, not cheap, ivory white, edges gold-pressed, just an address. and one handwritten line, "Come if you want more than surviving." I shoved it in my pocket and forgot about it for 3 days. Then Donna handed me my pay, half of what I expected. She said business was slow. I nodded, like that wasn't the last straw. Like I hadn't just eaten ketchup on crackers for dinner. That night, I stood under a flickering street lamp and pulled out the card. Read it again, turned it over. No number, no name, just that line. I took a bus I couldn't afford across town. Got off 2 stops too early because I panicked. Walked the rest. The building was gray stone, clean, quiet. The brass plate read, "The Rowan Foundation." I almost turned around, but something inside me, a voice I hadn't heard in years, whispered, "Let this be the moment everything changes." So, I walked through the front door, not to be saved, not to be held, but because I was done surviving alone. The Rowan Foundation didn't look like a place that changed lives. No bright lights, no miracles, just warm coffee, clean floors, and silence that didn't feel empty. May met me in the lobby. She looked nothing like I imagined. Gray hair pulled back, cardigan too big, eyes sharp enough to slice glass. "You don't owe me a story," she said. "Just don't lie when you speak." She led me down a narrow hallway. At the end of it was the wall. Framed portraits, dozens. All women, all ages. Some in graduation robes, some holding children, some in business suits with steel in their eyes. May nodded toward them. "These are the girls who came in like you." I stared at them longer than I should have. Not because they were smiling, but because every one of them looked like they'd survived something they never should have had to. She gave me a small room upstairs. A real bed, a desk, a window with no bars. That night, I showered for the first time in weeks. Hot water. Real. Soap. I sat on the bed and looked at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. Over the next few weeks, I worked in the kitchen, swept halls, sorted donations. May handed me a GED prep booklet and said, "You're not staying long-term. You're moving forward." For the first time in years, I had a calendar. Deadlines, classes, a future. No one knew where I was. No one came looking, and that was fine, because I was no longer invisible. I was on a wall. Not yet, but someday, and I swore when I got there. I'd take the next forgotten girl with me. It had been 9 years since I stepped out of that house. 9 years since anyone in my family said my name, or so I thought. The email came on a rainy Tuesday. Subject line, Estate of Virginia Harper, legal notice. I nearly deleted it, until I saw the name of the law firm, Redmond and Fields, my grandmother's lawyers. I opened it with shaking hands. She had passed away, and in her will, she left me something. But there was a catch. Inheritance to be discussed in person, with all named parties present. It didn't make sense. I hadn't spoken to my grandmother in years. After they kicked me out, they cut me off from her too. Back then, I'd tried to call. She never answered. I thought maybe she believed their lies, that I'd run away, that I didn't care. But now she was reaching out from the grave. And my name, Julia Harper, was still written in her final words. I called May, told her I didn't know what to do. She just said, "If they thought you disappeared, let them see who you became." That night, I booked a flight back home, used the last of my savings, didn't hesitate, because something deeper than grief was calling me, not just for closure, not just for revenge, but because my absence wasn't silence. It was preparation, and I had a feeling they were going to regret thinking I was gone. The law office smelled like polished wood and old money. Same firm that handled every Harper estate for generations. Same room where my parents signed the trust documents when I was born. Now, I was walking in through the front, not carried in someone's arms. I wore a plain black dress, hair tied back, nothing expensive, nothing loud. But I walked like someone who didn't need permission to be there. The receptionist looked up, froze. "They're already in the conference room," she whispered like she was afraid to say it out loud. I opened the door myself, and there they were, my father, my mother, my brother, arms slung over the back of a leather chair like he owned the place. My mother's jaw tightened like she'd bitten into something sour. My brother actually laughed. "Oh, look who showed up," he said, smirking. "Thought you were still mopping floors." I didn't answer. Didn't sit. The lawyer entered a beat later, briefcase in hand, and said one word that made the air shift. "Julia." My father blinked. My mother tried to interject. "There's clearly a mistake. She hasn't been involved in this family. For a decade." The lawyer cut her off. "She was never removed from the will. Virginia Harper made that clear." Silence. Then he began reading. Not just the numbers and property lines, but the statement. My grandmother's statement. Typed, signed, notarized. She was cast out, but she endured. And that strength deserves more than this family ever gave her. Then, the blow, the house, the land, the remaining assets. All to me, not split, not shared, mine. My mother stood so fast her chair screeched. "This is outrageous." I finally sat down, folded my hands, looked her in the eye, then sue her ghost. The key turned like it remembered me. The Harper estate was colder than I recalled. The curtains were drawn, the floors too clean, like someone had tried to erase a history they never lived. But this place, it wasn't theirs anymore. I moved through the rooms like I was walking through a dream I'd once lived in. The grand piano, the crystal vase, the family portraits, carefully rearranged to hide what they chose to forget. Upstairs in the smallest guest bedroom, I found her things. My grandmother's scent still clung to the shawl draped over the armchair. On her dresser sat a stack of books, yellowed at the corners, spines cracked, and next to them, a chipped porcelain teacup. I knew that cup. I was 8 when I gave it to her, bought it with saved-up lunch money from the school vending fundraiser. It was white, with faded pink roses, and a handle too dainty for her hands. She used it anyway. Every Sunday, she'd sit on the porch and sip chamomile from that cup like it was fine china. She always said, "Doesn't matter how it looks, it matters who it came from." And there it was, still here, cracked, stained, but not discarded. Beside it, tucked in a drawer, was her journal. She'd written about me. They lied to her, then they erased her. But I see her. Always have. The final entry simply said, "She will come back, and she will choose what to do with this house." That night, I didn't sleep in the master bedroom. I curled up in that little armchair, her shawl around my shoulders, and stared at that teacup, because I finally understood. She hadn't left me anything. She'd been saving it all along. The invitations weren't mailed. They were hand-delivered, quiet, discreet, purposeful. Julia planned the event with precision. No fanfare, no press release, just a soft announcement posted on a local shelter's bulletin board and a few whispered phone calls to people who'd once lived where she had. On the day of the celebration, the Harper estate looked different. The iron gate stood open. The front steps were swept, not grand. Tables lined the lawn, simple food, lemonade, name tags for girls no one used to call by name. Julia stood at the front door greeting each guest, not as a host, but as one of them. They came in waves, young women with tired eyes and strong shoulders, social workers, donors, mentors. There was no champagne toast, no string quartet, just laughter where silence used to live. Halfway through, a silver car parked across the street. Her mother stepped out first, flanked by her father and brother. They didn't approach. They watched. Her mother's lips parted, as if she'd expected red carpets and remorse. Instead, she saw folding chairs and foster girls painting. Murals on the garage wall. Her brother tried to walk up the driveway. A volunteer stopped him with a clipboard and a smile that didn't budge. Guest list only. Julia didn't even glance their way. She was busy helping a girl adjust her graduation cap for a photo. By the time the local news van arrived, Julia was handing over the deed, formally transferring ownership of the Harper estate to the Rowan Foundation's newest project, a transitional home for girls aging out of foster care. "We call it the May House," she said into the camera. "Built from rejection, held together by women who weren't supposed to survive." And from across the street, her family stood frozen, uninvited guests at a legacy they once owned, now watching it bloom without them. It was left there like a quiet apology. No knock, no note on the door. Just a suitcase, old brown leather, scuffed at the corners, resting against the white column of the Harper estate's porch. Julia almost didn't see it when she came down the steps to water the garden. For a moment, she thought it was someone's donation, but the tag said otherwise. Her name. In her father's handwriting. She didn't open it right away, just stared at it while the sun crawled over the roof. Eventually, curiosity won. Inside was a folded baby blanket, faded yellow, corners fraying, and a photo of her at 4 years, old, missing a front tooth, grinning on her father's shoulders. Beneath it all was a check, blank, signed, no memo line, no amount. It wasn't money, it was silence dressed as repentance. Julia sat on the porch steps, the suitcase beside her, and didn't touch a thing. A car idled at the end of the drive. Her father in the passenger seat didn't step out. Her mother was in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, lips pursed like she was holding back years. Julia didn't wave, didn't speak. She picked up the suitcase, walked it down the steps, and placed it back at the gate. Closed it gently, locked it, then turned and walked inside, letting the screen door shut behind her. The next morning it was gone. But the porch light flickered again that night, just once, like it had the day she left at 16. Only this time, she didn't flinch. Because some doors don't need slamming, some rejections don't need words, and some apologies come too late to matter. The auditorium was packed, not with donors or dignitaries, but with girls from every corner of the city, each one carrying something they'd survived. The local paper had written a feature about the May House, calling it a sanctuary built from someone else's silence. Julia hadn't planned to speak, but when the microphone was passed to her, the room hushed. She stood behind the podium in a simple navy dress, her grandmother's brooch pinned near her collarbone. No cue cards, no prepared remarks, just truth. "They said I'd fail," she began. "They told me I'd crawl back. But here's what failure looks like." She gestured behind her, toward a slideshow of new graduates, smiling kids, job offers, keys to apartments. Failure looks like 26 girls who now have their own beds. It looks like a shelter that became a home. It looks like community. In the back row, her family stood in the shadows. They hadn't been invited, but they came anyway, drawn to the very thing they once discarded. Her mother clutched her purse like it might protect her from what she was witnessing. Her brother looked down every time Julia met the audience's eyes. Her father just stared. When the crowd stood to applaud, they remained seated, because applause wasn't for them. A reporter later asked, "How did you survive without them?" Julia didn't blink. "I didn't survive, I grew." And that was the difference. No spite, no public takedown, just presence, just proof. They didn't need to be dragged, they needed to watch. And in that moment, surrounded by echoes of the life they tried to erase, Julia smiled. Because this was the only revenge that ever mattered, becoming everything they swore she couldn't. She stood at the gates one last time. No cameras, no speeches, just her, the wind, and the name newly etched in bronze, the May House. Her fingers brushed the plaque like a thank you note in silence. Behind her, the lights in the upstairs window flickered on, laughter spilling from the hallway where girls argued over music and leftovers and life. It sounded like healing. It sounded like home. Julia didn't need to stay anymore. Her job was done. The house stood without her now, stronger than when she'd claimed it. She walked the garden path slowly, touching nothing, taking only the scent of lavender with her. The same spot where she once watched her mother cut roses in silence. Now, overgrown, wild, and unapologetic. Her cab pulled up to the curb. She placed a single suitcase in the trunk, lighter than the one they'd left her. heavier than anything she'd carried before. As the car pulled away, she looked out the window, not at the estate, but at the small brass mailbox that once held nothing but bills and silence. Now it held letters, applications, second chances. The voiceover came soft, steady, final. They said I'd fail, that I was ungrateful, directionless, nothing without them. But failure would have meant becoming like them, cold, performative, too proud to change. Instead, I built something they'll never be part of. Not because I locked the door, but because truth only lets in those who see it. She didn't wave goodbye. Some people don't earn a farewell. She just leaned back in her seat and closed, her eyes as the house disappeared in the rearview mirror. Not buried, not burned, just behind her. And with that, the chapter ended.